Okay, it's 6 o'clock. It looks like we've got a pretty good audience. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on this beautiful late April evening. It's our fourth Monday program. Historic Harrisburg has been presenting educational programs on fourth Mondays for over 50 years. We're very proud of that. We've actually added an additional one. It's been so recently added, it's not on our calendar yet, but on Monday, the fourth Monday in June, I don't even know what the number is, but we're going to have a special program here. Let me think what we even decided on. Do you remember, Joe? Were you at a meeting with
Jimmy Rosen is in September.
They had a great idea. So anyway, we will announce it, our education committee. But also I want to call your attention to some other upcoming things in the meantime. May is Historic Preservation Month, so that starts later this week, and we have two large events. Our annual preservation celebration is Friday, May 16th, and that's going to be at the West Shore Country Club. And that's our preservation celebration and toast. We give out preservation awards. We'll have a silent auction. And it's a great party always, so plan on that. If you're a member of Historic Harrisburg, you should have received an invitation to that by now, but if you haven't, let us know. We'll send you an invitation. And then the very next day, on Saturday, May 17th, we have a walking tour of old and new landmarks of North 6th Street. And we'll start at the Broad Street Market, and we'll go out the back end of the Broad Street Market area past Millworks and work our way up to 6th Street. And there are a lot of great landmarks there. The new federal courthouse is there. The new State Archives building is there. The amazing new campus of the Catherine Hershey Early Learning Center is a few blocks farther. Homeland Center and their historic part, as well as their new part, and their garden will be in bloom when we go in the middle of May. And then we'll work our way back down through some of the other streets of Old Uptown, back to the Broad Street Market, and have you there just in time to get lunch at the Broad Street Market on a Saturday. So that will be a wonderful walking tour. You can order tickets online for that, or you can pay showing up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll be on the Market Plaza, and we'll start from there. We've just had a couple of things that happened here. Our exhibit for the annual Artistic Expressions High School Art Competition just came down yesterday. They had their awards program, the final day that the exhibit was in place. Students from about 10 different area high schools all compete to have their artwork shown, and we display it here in this building in our David Bronstein Gallery. Now we've just put up today in the Bronstein Gallery our City Beautiful exhibit, which you'll see along the teller line as you go out. Feel free to look at that. That'll stay up for a few weeks. We've got other things coming up, so study this calendar, and more than that, visit our website for updates and for other information that isn't part of the calendar. So anyway, I see a few faces I don't recognize, so I'm going to do a little bit of demographic research here and ask how many people are here at a Historic Harrisburg event for the first time? Oh, fewer than I thought. Okay, great. But welcome to you who are here for the first time. We're delighted to have you, and we hope you'll come back. And to those of you who have been here before, many of you look very familiar to me, members of Historic Harrisburg for many years, and we're always happy to see you as well. With that, I'm going to introduce our program for the evening. Matthew Kenny is a former staff member of Historic Harrisburg Association. He worked with us before launching his professional career, which he's going to be telling you about tonight. And he's now a master at the trade of doing sidewalks and concrete work and patios and so forth. And that's a very important thing, particularly in urban neighborhoods where sidewalks and brickwork and patios are really more important than grass. Sometimes there isn't any grass, but so what Matthew's going to tell you about is often the most important landscape feature in a neighborhood. So without further ado, Matthew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. And thank you to Historic Harrisburg and our wonderful staff that helped to put all this together, and the foundation that sponsors this. This is a great opportunity to talk to a very audience about a very important subject. Thank you, David, for emphasizing the importance of it. So, just so you know, this is going to be a cursory understanding of the event, or of the subject. There's a lot to discuss here. As we know, masonry and bricks is as old as the ages themselves, so there's a lot to study here. So I'm not going to be able to maybe answer all of your questions. This will be rather brief, and at the end, I'm going to try to wrap a little early so that we can go on a brief walking tour about 4 minutes down the road on Green Street. A couple of homeowners that I did a project for last fall who received a exposed aggregate concrete finish, welcome us to come take a look at their property right down the street. So it's a short distance away, and you'll be able to see some of this stuff, some good examples and some not so good examples of sidewalks in the city. So our agenda here is we're gonna talk about, just briefly, why do sidewalks matter? Obviously, David answered a lot of those things. Safety is a big thing. So fortunately for me, in the realm of doing these public thoroughfares and sidewalks, I don't have to go through codes like a lot of you guys might do. When you pulled your paintbrush out, they're gonna come and stall you before you get your proper permits for that. We go through the city engineering, and they're really easy to work with. So fortunately, if you're dealing with a sidewalk, you won't have to deal with too much red tape to get this done. But safety is a big concern. Our walkability, obviously, if you guys have spent any time on the streets of Harrisburg, you know how invasive the roots are and how the beautiful tree lines in the city that do make it so charming are a challenge that we do face. So we'll go over some of those challenges and talk about what works and what doesn't. So, as I mentioned, this is just a brief.
I'm going to turn out that middle light, Matthew. I think they'll be able to see.
Sure.
Thanks, Jeb.
So this is just a blueprint here that's one of many that details what the sidewalks have to be. There's a bunch of factors that you have to consider, and the biggest enemy of any sidewalk or paved surface is freezing and thawing. And here in Pennsylvania, we experience a lot of that, aside from the roots, that is. So that's why you want to make sure that you have a compacted base that is going to ensure that your concrete or bricks aren't going to settle and move in any unfavorable ways. Parking is a big issue here in the city when you're trying to do work on the sidewalks, which is why I strongly encourage going to standard parking. If you plan on closing down a portion of your block to do some pavers or concrete sidewalks, you can get a parking pass from them, and that really alleviates a lot of the trouble of getting your materials in and out. None of this stuff is lightweight, so you want to move it the shortest distance as possible. And if you can park right next to where you're putting all your materials or unloading them, it's pretty ideal. So some of the tools you guys have in the handouts, if you didn't find one, there may still be a few copies at the back. If you didn't get any, feel free to reach out. I can always email you a list of those. So all of the tools here on the homeowner side are going to be used by the pros, so don't short sell yourself on your skill set. The only difference is when you're using something like a sledgehammer, I might have access to a jackhammer or something in that nature, but you don't always need to have that sort of thing with sidewalks. In order to get the concrete out, or bricks, you are definitely going to want to have yourself a digging bar or an iron. I use a skid steer with forks on it. We'll see an example of how removing that is pretty quick compared to what could be a couple week-long project if you decide to take it upon yourself. As far as concrete goes, these are some of the tools that you might not have, and I brought a few of them just for demonstration. These tools are very important for both aesthetic purposes, but also for structural purposes. The edger here keeps your edges nice and clean, and I can even pass this around if you guys want to take a look at it. It's not the cleanest of tools, but that's because it's working. This is the center groover, and this is probably your most important tool. This is going to put a groove through the concrete that allows for controlled breaking of the concrete. One guarantee of the concrete is it's going to crack. So what we do is manage those cracks, control them over the time by putting these control joints in them so that when it breaks, you don't even see it, that it's there. It looks like an aesthetic finish to it. These can be found at Home Depot if you really are invested in the project. This is the...
Sort of like the way graham crackers have grooves in them so they break evenly.
You couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it better myself, David.
They don't work very well.
Make lousy sidewalks.
These ones, when you lose calories. Graham crackers, you tend to gain them. This is the weapon of choice, the hand float. So you might have seen these before. These are actually made out of aluminum or magnesium, and it's a specific material to make sure that the cream of the concrete or the cement is brought up to the surface so you have a workable finish, so that when you decide to broom it, you have enough material that's able to work. You can get a nice finish on it. This is a steel trowel. You're not really going to use this on your concrete as much. You can, although the American Concrete Society will say, don't use steel on concrete that's exposed for outside, but every single contractor does. This I brought more for the purpose of just the paver setting. So when you're setting your pavers, that's the trickier thing, is getting the sand base flat and at the right elevation. A hand trowel is going to be your best friend in getting that nice smooth surface where you can spread the sand out in a nice level way. So when you install your bricks, you're not going to have any issues with them being uneven. This here is one of my best friends. You can use this for both sand and concrete. If it isn't already obvious, this has seen its fair share of use in concrete. This is called a screed or a screed rod, and it's used to basically, like Betty Crocker, when you scrape your baking measurements off, cleaning the top of your measurement cup. This is basically what we use, but on concrete forms. I'll also use this to set elevations, and this one, fortunately, has a nice bubble level in them, so I can tell whether I have proper pitch. Pitch is a big thing that you definitely want to ensure that you have, because on any exterior surface, you're going to be exposed to water and rainfall. And that you want to make sure it gets to the right place.
You're not passing that around?
You're more than welcome to come take a look at it. This is, I'll definitely pass this one around. This is a bull float. This is a C-channel design. That's a similar design. The bull float is used for your initial floating of the concrete after you've already screeded it. And that'll make sure that you close up any of the holes and the imperfections in it, and basically ensure that your surface is flat overall. Flatness is key, because anywhere you're going to get puddles, you might get ice. So remembering that just because it's wet in the summertime and a puddle is there, doesn't mean that it's a good idea to have. It's a very good idea to try to eliminate any of that and shed all of our water into the proper storm disposal. So, and then this is a mallet. You can get these anywhere. This is a rubber mallet. They also have dead blow hammers that are filled with sand. This will be great for setting your paver base, or for your pavers into your bases. So any of your bricks that might sit a little proud, or if they're not nestled in properly, give them a little love tap. This will be a really helpful tool when you're setting the pavers themselves. And then just one more tool, just for fun. This is the demo saw. If you don't have one of these, you should. They're useful for just about anything. I like to cut my sourdough loaves in the morning with it. But the demo saw is incredibly useful for removing concrete. A lot of times when it's poured, it creeps its way underneath certain structures like brick staircases, etc. And if you don't remove the concrete properly, you can damage whatever it's connected to or married up against. The demo saw will make a nice clean cut and free that up. You can also rent one of those from places like True Value on 29th Street. They actually have a nice program there where you can rent their demo saw. And of course, if I like you, I might bring it over and help you out. So what do we need for the pavers or concrete? So a lot of it's very similar. There's a lot of overlap. The only difference in concrete is you're not going to use sand in the base. You're going to use either a 2A or 2B stone. These are just classifications of stone. This is a nice, beautiful blue limestone, much like the stone that's quarried here in Pennsylvania. And we have a lot of history with being recognized globally for having some of the best supply of limestone on the planet. Because of its angularity and shape, it actually knits best with the concrete when there's more uneven surfaces, and it provides for more surface area to make an even stronger concrete. Fortunately, here in central Pennsylvania, there is an abundance of it, and it is some of the highest quality limestone that's available to planet Earth, frankly. So we're in a really good place to find that. Sand, you can use any type of sand is really adequate. Paver sand is a little bit denser and grainier. That'll definitely have a higher compaction rate. But bar sand, mason sand, or C144, which is just a term for regular paver sand or concrete sand, you can use as a base as well. And then, of course, with concrete, you'll need the concrete and the formwork itself that's going to contain your sidewalk. A lot of this in the city actually already has its formwork in place. It's just the sidewalk next to it, to the left and the right of it. But that's where you're going to want to put the expansion material, which is that black fiber strip. You've all seen this before. It might be caulked over in a lot of the federal jobs. That's a requirement that they do that. Expansion material is very important in allowing for the movement of concrete, not only during the curing process, but during the freezing in the wintertime. It allows the concrete to actually move and breathe. We look at all this stuff as a static thing, like it just sits there and it doesn't move. But in reality, all of it's moving all the time, just a lot slower than we're used to moving. So this allows us to control that movement and again, create the perfect environment so that the concrete will settle and break in the areas that we intend it to. So site prep and excavation is going to be your biggest challenge as a homeowner. This is a route that I pulled out that will be at the property shortly at the end of the presentation that you can see. Fortunately, that tree was pretty much dead, so it came out with relative ease with the help of a little bobcat there. So you want to make sure that when you're excavating, sounds like a lot, but you're going to be going down, you want to go down about 8 to 10 inches below grade. And the purpose for that is so that you can have a good 4-inch base of material of stone that you compact, and then that allows for you to have a 4-inch thickness of concrete on top of that. For pavers, you're going to do about the same excavation, maybe a little less, only because the pavers themselves are typically thinner. If you're reusing or repurposing a historic brick in the city, they're a lot thinner than the modern pavers, which have about a 2 3/8 thickness. Most of the bricks in the city are about 2 inches. So that allows you to put about an inch base of sand in there to get you up to elevation so that your concrete, or so that your pavers meet the tops of the curbs and allow for the shedding of water down onto the street. Because that's where we're putting most of our water. So, as far as excavation and site work goes, it's all pretty much the same. Whether you're doing concrete or pavers, you are going about the same distance down through the ground. So here's a quick snapshot. This is actually the job we'll be looking at if we can make it over there, of just some of the site prep and what it took. So here, this is one trailer load of material out of, I think it was 2 that we removed from that job, full trailer loads. So that's an 8 by 12 trailer. Also, if you have a big enough pickup truck, you can rent these from your local equipment rental places. And just a snapshot, that was one load for about just under 300 square feet of concrete. So if you know how many square feet you're working with, you can fit about 150 square feet of base and debris into one of these trailers, and that's just kind of an idea of how much you might have to take out. Here we have our formwork set up. Notice there's pitch here to the sidewalk, and we placed our expansion joint in before the actual pour, and I tried to make it decorative and noticeable so nobody tripped over it, because getting people to stay out of your construction site in the city is near impossible. So we do everything we can to make it blatantly obvious that there are hazards there or that we're working. Here's a picture of the concrete just after we ran our bull float across it. You can see the sheen of the surface. It's just been bull floated. It's almost ready to be finished. And to the right of it, you'll notice we put a plastic base in here. This is particularly special to this finish because what we did was an exposed aggregate finish. That was our opening slide that you'll see another picture of. In order to do the exposed aggregate finish, which is a historic look, admittedly, it is very charming because we're using stones that are actually locally quarried, and they will present themselves to the surface and provide a nice dimpled texture that is actually very high durability. But we have to wash that cement off the top to expose the aggregate. those that plastic in there is actually a basin made out of wood that we created as a trough, more or less, so that we could collect all of the cement in those. You want to do that because cement is a caustic. It is an environmental hazard. If you put too much of it in our waterways, it's not good for the fish. So we do everything in our care to take, or in our ability to take care of our responsibility to maintaining our waterways and ensuring that we're collecting anything that is going to be a wash off on our job site. We're capturing it and handling it off site. And then we have a little video. We'll just go ahead and hit play here. Just of kind of a time lapse of what some of the demolition looks like. And of course, this is from an experienced equipment operator. I forget his name, but you'll notice these are big pieces, and the nice way to take concrete out is in the largest size you can possible.
Contractors we hire never move that fast.
Yeah, they move about twice as fast as they do in real life. So when I was there, it went a lot slower.
And what do you do with that debris then?
That is a great question. So there are a few places that you can take the debris, and right now we are waiting on approval from the 19th Street. It was a former landfill that they're using, and right now the 83 project has really taken up a large portion of that. So they're actually working on reopening it, and they're actually trucking loads out of there to make it available for contractors and homeowners like us to be able to deposit those materials. There is also some of the old quarries. There used to be one that was on Paxson Street that is right across from like where the Hardee's is, if you're familiar. That was a sweet spot because it was very close, very easy to access, and at the time it was very affordable. It's gotten, the prices have gone up for going to a quarry and depositing, largely because of the construction projects in this area with the interstates. The quarries are able to command a much higher price per load, which does add some significant costs from back in the day when you could put this stuff just about anywhere. There also is a location in Halifax called Riverview Tree Farm, I think it is. And that location will accept clean fill and debris as well. It is a bit of a haul though, going up over the mountain on 147.
And it's okay to have a combination of rock and stone and like trees and roots and plant material, or should it be?
The definition of clean fill does not include organic matter in the form of trees and grass and bushes, etc.
Okay.
But concrete and dirt are fully acceptable.
I see.
I'll just show this one more time, just a short video. So this is actually an acid wash that we're applying. This is a gentle acid wash provided here by my good friend Emily, who also does brickwork and masonry in the city as well. This is a light acid wash that will clean the haze off of the surface of the stones. When we do the final wash, you'll notice the stone colors themselves begin to shine through. Otherwise, the cement leaves a little bit of a haze on top. After this process, we do put a clear coat on top. And the one we chose to use, you'll see in a little bit, is actually a low sheen, So it's a matte finish, if you will. So this is the sidewalk at Chris and Genevieve's place that we'll be taking a look at. This is what we had started out with. Their contractors that replaced the gas line attempted to do an exposed finish, but it wasn't done correctly. And I suspect that the stones they used weren't washed properly because the bonding to the stones itself didn't knit quite with the cement. So here's our before, and there's our after.
Wow.
If you walk past the sidewalk, you might not even know that it was brand new. And that was the goal. Chris and Jen are very tasteful, and they didn't want to put bright white, broom finished concrete, similar to their neighbors down the street. While it is nice in its appearance and safe, it does take away from the charm and appeal of a historic neighborhood in some ways. This you'll notice with the matte finish and the exposed aggregate, it looks historic. You might never guess that it was just poured last fall. We did some landscaping there as well with the rocks and everything else, so it turned out pretty nice.
You don't dig deep enough to have to worry about call before you dig stuff, right?
So that's a great question. Call before you dig is preferred to use. They're gonna say anytime that you pick up a shovel and plant a flower that you should call before you dig. So they say that because they're liable for anything that happens underground. Call before you dig is an excellent tool to use if you're a contractor like me that's using powered equipment. That's typically when they want to see that happen. Now, legally, gas lines, power lines all have a minimum threshold where they're supposed to be buried below. Now, do they always follow that? No. Who finds that out? Guys like me. So call before you dig is a recommended, definitely recommended to use. However, when you can see the utilities on the side of your house, you know where they are. Don't take a digging bar and start prodding where your gas line is. Not a great idea. But call before you dig is a great tool to use. For homeowners, it's free, and you're welcome to use that. It's 811. They will be able to come out. They'll notify all the utility companies, whether it's Comcast or Verizon, your gas line, or your water company. The only thing is they'll come and they'll spray paint all over your property, which they've already done, I think, 3 or 4 times to our new sidewalk down there, because every time a different contractor, whether it's Capital Region Water, UGI, or the sewer company that's coming in to replace the lines, they all legally have to get it. So they just keep painting lines all over the city. You'll see it at the site there. So some of the challenges obviously we face are the tight spaces in the parking. We talked about that, and there are ways to navigate that with parking permits and getting parking passes. Manual excavation, while it is worth the calories burnt, is definitely a labor of love. Typically in the city, you're going to run into roots, which is why I recommended digging iron. I also will occasionally employ the use of my butter knife and cut those roots out of the way to make sure that we can extract everything without too much disruption. The debris and soil removal is a challenge. As you guys know, taking it certain places and to the specific dump sites is a bit of a hassle, and also being able to haul that material all out. You saw that an 8x12 dump trailer took only about 150 square feet of material 8 inches deep. So you can think, you know, your pickup bed is a fraction of that size. It's maybe only a third of that size. So that would be maybe 6 trips, you know, in a full-size pickup bed. But without a dump trailer, you're unloading all of that by hand. So there's a bit of work involved in it, but it's worth it. The noise restrictions, just don't go working too late into the evening. I mean, Saturdays and weekends is when we oftentimes, as homeowners, find ourselves available to do these projects. But the restrictions are really only going to be for guys like me that are making noise with my favorite butter knife or my diesel equipment that sure puts out some decibels. Some common mistakes. Here's a photo of pooling water on a concrete slab. While it looks harmless right now, come January, that's a liability. That's a new hip for some of us. Definitely something to keep in mind when you're doing your projects is that you definitely use a level. Everything should have at least a 1/4 inch per foot, or about an inch and 8 feet. So when you're putting your sidewalks in, use your bubble level to adjust. That's something that you can sight with you know, just the naked eye, and make sure that it has enough slope to it so that you can shed the water in the proper areas. Don't skip compaction. Although it might look like it's a nice site that's ready to go, compaction is huge. You can actually squeeze about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of material down from running a compactor. You can also borrow a plate compactor from places like True Value and rent one for the weekend. It's something that you might only run for 15 minutes, and it's worth every penny that you spent, because otherwise you'll be using a steel hand tamper, which I don't discourage you from using, but it is a lot of work. You want to make sure that you go around and get a uniform compaction around all of the perimeter and work your way in towards the middle. That allows you to ensure that all of your stone and base is knit nicely and will be disturbed the least amount when water intrudes. Using stone is important, and compacting with it, because it allows for the infiltration of water. If water doesn't have anywhere to go, it's going to expand. And water is powerful enough to split rocks and break mountains open. And that's what's causing a lot of our cities to heave, or sidewalks to heave and push up. So using stone and compaction, we can really overcome a lot of those challenges, especially in an urban environment. Edge restraints might not be as big of a concern here in the city, again, because most of our sidewalks marry up to existing masonry, whether it's the curb, the foundation of the home, or the sidewalk to the left and the right. Those function as your edge restraints, so they're not as big of a concern in projects like this. However, if you're up against grass, or there's soil there, edge restraints are very useful because it's going to keep all the pressure from the sides, keeping your bricks from rolling out and falling out. I'm sure we've all seen a sidewalk that was nicely done in bricks, but the edges just get sad and they droop down. Edge restraints properly installed will definitely make a huge difference. I'm a fan of using old school materials like just steel. It's a little bit harder to work with, but it's less forgiving when the elements try to do what they will with it. They also make plastic edge restraints that are flexible, and they also have nail holders in them where you can pound the nails in and use just a regular mallet or a hammer to install them. The joint sand for your pavers is important because that's going to fill in all the voids and allow these bricks to settle nicely and not shift around laterally. The joint sand will also keep dirt from migrating into those, and that'll keep your weeds from cropping up. You can also use polymeric sands. You go to a masonry supply store like Budding and Camp Hill, and they'll give you a whole laundry list of different options that you have. But good old-fashioned brick paver sand or mason sand is a great choice. It allows water to pass through, and it keeps the dirt out and settles your bricks. Overworking concrete, I don't even do that often because by that time I'm so exhausted. Overworking concrete can happen though, and if you're using steel tools, you can entrain air in it, which can cause the surface to spall, pop, and break. So you can damage concrete actually by overworking it, especially in an exterior environment. So that's one concern. I went through a lot of information really fast. You guys might have some questions. Feel free to raise your hands.
Well, time and labor, you have a project here. How long did that take you and how many persons?
So the project that we'll take a look at here shortly, that project was completed in under a week. I think we actually did it in 3 days. The majority of that time is spent honestly hauling materials away and removing them. So once the material is removed and out of the way, getting our stone on site and spreading that is generally pretty straightforward as long as you can park next to where you're working. That project I did with 2 guys for the demo, myself and another man, and then on the day of the pour, Emily actually helped me on that one. And I had one other guy. So it was 3 of us that poured the concrete and about 2 of us for the demolition and excavation.
Just want to reiterate that the aggregate finish does not harm the environment at all. You have designated spots for runoff, right? And it's supposed to preserve the integrity of the historic aesthetic.
Yeah, so when done correctly and you capture all of your caustics and you take the time to build those basins, you'll be allowed to, or you'll be able to capture any of the caustics, which cement is, and protect, the streets and the storm drains from collecting any of that. With the exposed finish, it's nice because when you look at a broom finish, you'll notice the classic little ridges that you'll see, very tiny ridges in it. And the ridges wear off relatively quickly. Within 5 years, you'll see them start to diminish. The nice thing with an exposed finish is, instead of having ridges as the tractive surface, you have the tops of those pebbles. And those pebbles have been weathering for millions of years. They're very tough and durable. So when your shoes make contact with those, they have a much higher wearability than normal broom finishes, which is why that's all we see anymore of some of our sidewalks. If you notice, they already are exposed. It was just a matter of time and weather. So we're just beating it to the punch and making it look pretty to start with, and it will last that way for decades to come. David?
Matthew, the pebbles, how do you mix them into the concrete? Is that what you do? Just sort of like making chocolate chip cookies?
If it was that easy, everybody would be doing it, David. That's why I call Pensy Supply. They actually have a specific stockpile. In fact, I got off the phone from them today that's from Sullivan County. I think I know somebody who's from there. Sullivan County is home to World's State Park. If you've ever been there, you see the natural beauty of all the stones that have cascaded down from the mountainsides into the streams, and they've just been tumbled for thousands of years, getting washed and polished. So they collect those stones and they sort them in different sizes, and the ones that we chose to use and that Pensy uses is called the 3/8 inch River Jack. And it's a beautiful stone because it has a mixture of maroon, green, coffee, taupe, all kinds of different color shades that are contained naturally within that stone. We also used for the garden bed there the exact same stone from the same exact quarry, just in a different size screening. So you actually see a matching of natural materials that are local here to Pennsylvania. Great question, but Pensy does that for me.
Is there a major difference between a brushed surface and an exposed stone surface?
So in terms of the finish, yes, we're not putting a broom on. That's one for start. But the finish, as I was describing a minute ago, allows for a longer wear pattern, where the broom might last those little ridges.
I understand that.
Yeah.
My question was, if I'm having it done to my sidewalk,
Mhm.
would it be more expensive to do a brushed one or a stone one?
By and large, the brushed finish is the most cost-effective option, for sure. Part of the mix design for the exposed aggregate does include a higher PSI rating. So PSI rating is judged by basically the ability of it to withstand pressure, but that's increased by the amount of cement concentration that you have. So exposed, because it's an unusual aggregate size and is not as reliable for the sake of the knitting as the stones you see here in this picture, they increase the PSI rating for that to 4,200, so that it's able to withstand 4,200 PSI. That mix design is stronger technically, so it is a stronger, more durable concrete. If that answers your question. Yes?
So what's the life expectancy for something about that size that's in the aggregate concrete versus, say, a brick type of sidewalk? Like how long before that buckles and gets out of shape?
That's going to be a very site-specific question. While I understand that, there are many factors that go into it. The preparation is going to be key. Your excavation is going to determine whether or not you have a long-lasting or successful sidewalk. So going as deep as you can, you could put 8 inches of base in. And if you're pouring a driveway, it's preferred that you go to a 6 to 8 inch thickness, because you have the same amount of thickness of aggregate as you do on top. So if you have a balance of those two materials, you'll see less of a disruption in the surface. So removing as much dirt as you can as possible is key. Dirt loves water, and water loves to expand. So if we get water out of the equation, we start to solve some of those problems. Trees are going to be obviously one of the intrusions that over the years will find their way even through stone. But because there's not as much water contained in the stone, the roots don't prefer it. They prefer the dirt. So you'll see the trees avoiding your sub-base to your material. For pavers, they're very neat because they act like a mosaic. If you have a tree that buckles up under it, it's like a carpet that moves, where a concrete will, admittedly, under the right conditions, heave. Pavers are a little bit more or less temperamental in the sense that they do require a lot more maintenance. You may be able to get a longer life expectancy out of them because the bricks themselves are like Legos. You just take them out, you clean it up, and you put them right back in as long as they're in good condition. There's nothing wrong with using the bricks over and over again. And that is the beauty of using a brick for a sidewalk, is that its life expectancy is indefinite. As long as it's cared for and it's not abused by things like salt and other corrosive chemicals, the life expectancy of a brick is hundreds of years. Or somebody different? Stephen?
When do you, or if, is it required by the city in any of the sidewalks to use rebar?
Rebar is specifically used for vehicular traffic. They will specify in certain areas where there's crosswalks and there's ADA access for federal compliance. Federal guidelines have a much stricter tolerance for some of these paved surfaces. So when they know that there's going to be an increased traffic or an increased volume or weight of traffic like a vehicle, rebar is recommended. Yeah. So in a typical pedestrian sidewalk, they'll handle. I mean, the rating of the concrete that the mix design I use is 4,000 psi. So a square inch is about that big. So you can take 4,000 pounds and put it on that 1 square inch, and it'll still withstand that pressure before it fails. So you can imagine there's a great degree of tolerance that normal concrete has in order to withstand those sorts of pressure and constraints. Rebar also has a tendency to corrode. So if anybody like your neighbors is using salt will find a way through the pores of the concrete and migrate to the actual rebar itself. And rebar expands at about 15% of its actual size, which is why you see on the undersides of bridges, all the blowouts, right behind it is a rusty, rust-stained, exposed rebar. And that's because of salt corrosion over the years of application has made its way into the matrix of the concrete and then caused the rebar to expand. So I like to use, there's synthetic options for rebar as well. There's fiberglass and polymer-based ones. They're pricier, but I do try to, in pedestrian areas, avoid as much metal as possible in the concrete because I know I can't control what people put on their sidewalks, and eventually it could cause failure. I'm a little old school in that way. So rebar is good, it's strong, it works, but there are limitations to it.
Does the city allow you to remove sidewalk and not put it all back? So if you want to make a tree well that wasn't there previously, is there restrictions on the width that the sidewalk has to be? Do you know? Have you ever done the jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I could take you back to the beginning slide to just show you, or one of the, so this one right here, for example, this tree box was this big. That tree was suffocated. There was no room for it, and it was a skate park ramp, more or less. The engineer and I had a conversation about this specific project, and the desire, I should say, of the city engineer's office is that we have 4 to 5 feet wide. Now, I say that because not everybody goes through the permitting process and does this correctly, and not everywhere has the accommodations for that. Some of the trees have just grown to the point where you might only have 3 feet available to do that, short of removing the tree. We wanted to make sure that this tree had plenty of room for its roots, so we expanded the footprint of that flower bed and made sure that we maintained a minimum distance between the threshold of that building and the sidewalk itself. So to answer your question, there is no specific guideline saying that you can or cannot remove sections of paved areas. The requirement is that there is at least 4 to 5 foot passageway, particularly for an ADA purpose, so that pedestrians can make their access through the sidewalk, because it is considered a public thoroughfare. So getting in touch with the engineer would be a great way to enter that conversation, and Judd Massaris, who is their representative right now, is incredibly easy to work with and has been really helpful. So he'd be a great person to have that conversation with regarding your site-specific question. Dwayne?
My question is related to the old brick that you're gonna remove and replace.
Mm-hmm.
But if you need to add more brick to what's there, do you have is there a historic area, or where do you go to get matching brick?
I might point my finger at somebody that knows where some bricks are here, but it's also a secret stash pile that we have to use sparingly. Now, the bricks that you get at the masonry supply store are actually going to be pretty darn close to what you get. Now, they are different material, so given the new kiln firing processes, they've been able to make tougher, harder bricks. And so as a result, they don't have to be the same shape or size or thickness. But when you're doing a paver base, your sand can adjust for that elevation. So if you have a thicker brick that's old and a newer brick that's a slightly thinner, you can just raise your sand base up and set your brick in that, or vice versa. So that'll allow you to marry in those old and new surfaces. And in time, the weather will of course make their appearance seem as though that they belong there. But repurposing old bricks with new ones, it's just a matter of finding something that's similar or close. They do make more expensive bricks that are hand molded, but those are typically used for a vertical structure because you see more of the molding on the face of the bricks. You do want to make sure though that you specify paver bricks, although in the city they're not specifically paver bricks because historically speaking they used what was available. So don't necessarily go down the rabbit hole of having to find a paver brick that is historic because you're not necessarily going to find it matching up to the same dimensions that you have. So getting something dimensionally close is going to be your best bet because it's going to be the easiest to work with.
Is there a difference between paving bricks and brick they use to build a house?
Yes. So the thickness of a paving brick is usually thicker. It's about 2 3/8 of an inch thick. And that thickness allows it to have a higher PSI rating like we mentioned earlier. So it's able to handle traffic from
'Cause I've
vehicles,
seen
for
people
example.
just throw bricks in and you think, oh, it's not right.
Yeah. And to that point, again, it's in a historic setting, you're not gonna find paver bricks. You're gonna find bricks that they used to build walls with and they used to build sidewalks with. At the time, any brick was as good as the next brick, and they weren't making different molds just because the manufacturing processes at that point were just made sure that they were getting the right brick in the right shape and right size. And believe me, even to this day, it's tough for them to figure it out because I'm always finding different shapes bricks, and it's a challenge sometimes putting stuff together, even with modern technology. So they often just went for uniformity and maintained the same size of the bricks. But to answer your question, yes, in modern days, those bricks are different. Wall bricks are going to be a little bit thinner or tall, not as tall rather.
Brick sidewalks do occasionally get ripped up because they're putting in a handicap ramp or something like that. The city will do that. And we've sometimes been able to say, hey, we'd like those bricks because somebody wants them for a project and this and that. So it takes a little bit of logistics, but usually it's just a matter of expressing an interest in getting them. So I would say if somebody's ever looking for old sidewalk brick, let us know. We'll put it on social media and we'll see what happens.
What's the difference between like a bridge like the Harvey Taylor Bridge, to my knowledge, has never had any holes in it or potholes? You know, and is it a different standard, different than a sidewalk, for instance? How do you, is it a harder concrete?
Oh, the concrete itself?
Yeah.
That might be a little bit beyond my pay grade. I don't build bridges, but one day we're getting there. The Harvey Taylor is a real marvel though because it is built with it's actually not, there's no welds on the bridge. So part of that lends to its ability to actually flex without cracking. Welds are vulnerable to cracking, and so the longevity of that bridge is held together by rivets, massive, huge rivets. And those rivets actually are almost a better binding material than a weld because of their ability to flex and move and jostle in the forces of the wind, etc. So that's a really well built bridge, but we don't build with rivets anymore because it takes a lot of time and a lot of manpower. Back here, sir.
Do you do outside steps with stones as compared to concrete or brick?
I brought one because I thought somebody would bring it up. We've all seen this material here. Anybody guess? This is Hubblestown brownstone. So this came from a step a couple of blocks down, actually just beyond Chris and Genevieve's where the project was, that I actually removed one of these that was failed. The surface of it had pitted so much because just from wear and traffic that it began to pool water and of course eventually form ice dams. So the trouble now is that the brownstone quarry is dry. That piece of stone right there is one of the last pieces of stone that you're going to see on the surface of the earth now that is in existence. That's brownstone. Now all the brownstone that is sourced is from overseas. I believe in India is where they have the closest match. I had to recently source some for a project last fall where we used some brownstone as a plinth base for a column. And even that stone, while it was similar in its characteristics, is not the same. And it's a very tricky and beautiful brownstone because it's not actually brown. If you have any color acuity, probably more than I do, but there's actually purple in this. This isn't a true brown color. And it is a really marvelous beauty because it shows a very deep, rare color that's not found often in nature. And we were able to quarry millions of tons of it here in Hummelstown and use much of it in the city of Harrisburg. And if you guys are familiar with the brownstones of New York City, those quarries supplied all the blocks to build that. So it is no longer available locally, if that answers your question. To get stones cut and milled for that size and shape, there are quarries available. I use Rolling Rock Quarries, not the beer distributor, but Rolling Rock down in Boyerstown is a nice drive away. If you ever want to just go there and look at their operation, it's a treat for somebody like me at least. Because there's just so much natural materials available and exposed, and you get to really get a taste of what is available in the world, because they are an importer as well of some of these materials. So to answer your question, it's not difficult to install them if you have the right equipment. It just may be difficult trying to source the material that is best suited for your property. I did replace that threshold with concrete. But I did an experiment on it with some dyes, and we tried to get the pigment close. I can't say that I nailed it, but I think I got pretty close. So if you guys want to walk down with me, I'll be happy to show
Can you
that to you
flip
guys.
them? Sometimes when they get worn, you can just flip them over and use the bottom side. Is that
The
possible?
challenge with brownstone is, while it's a beautiful stone, it is not a durable one. It is incredibly soft. Brownstone is a form of sandstone that you can take your fingernail across and scratch it. So the problem is, sand also loves water in that setting, so it will absorb a lot of water and get saturated. Well, what happens when water is absorbed in a stone outside? It gets cold, it freezes, and it expands. So you end up with a compromised stone. In fact, when I removed that threshold, it was in one piece. The moment it budged forward, it split in half. And I didn't even move it more than 5 inches before it did that. While that is a creative solution, and I admire the thought, it doesn't work that well in the field. Yes? Go ahead, sir.
I just wondered, on our block on Green Street, there is one property that due to tree roots, it has raised the sidewalk, and it's actually a very hazardous situation. I've seen a couple of people trip, they go up through with their phones and things, but it is an absentee owner. He has that property divided into apartments and so on. If that is reported to the city, will the city actually come out and take action on that? I don't know if David might know. Or
I think they will. I think you can report that to codes.
Codes, that's what
Yeah, and the property owner, if that's a hazard, I'm not just sure what the action that they'll take, but I'll find out for you, Ed, because that's a very good question. We'll try and publicize, because there are a lot of what you're describing, hazards because you trip.
Yeah, the Bureau of Planning with led by Jeff Knight is going to be your best resource for seeking resolutions in that way. Jeff's a great contact, although he's incredibly busy. Because you can imagine that one sidewalk that you mentioned has a lot of very similar friends around the city that act the sidewalks that act the same way. So that is part of the reason why they moved sidewalks into the engineering department, because it's a streamlined process to ensure that the safety of the public is ensured by the expedient repair of these sidewalks. So
You mentioned Jeff Knight being overworked. The good news is he's getting an assistant finally after his assistant position being vacant for over 2 years.
oh wow.
Erica Kaufman was an intern here at Historic Harrisburg, and she's got a education in historic preservation, so she's going to be a huge help in Jeff Knight's office starting, I think, 1st of July.
Sounds like we have some advocates there in the city
And
now.
plus, he lives in the historic district, so he's really in tune with what's going on. We're very fortunate to
Good
have
point,
him.
Eileen.
And there was one more question here.
Yes, on the subject of brownstones, I've heard that if you paint over brownstone or other types of stone, like if you have on the front of your house, a lot of houses have brownstone up to, 3 feet or something. I've heard if you paint over it with latex paint, it can't breathe and it spalls and flakes. Is there anything to do once it's been painted over? Can you remove that paint from masonry?
That is the bane of my existence and every other mason's. Painting brick is about as good as wrapping your skin with saran. It'll just not allow it to breathe, and it will cause it to wither away and deteriorate. Bricks and concrete are like skin. They need to breathe. They need to allow moisture to escape through them and for it to transfer in. Without the ability to exhale, if you will, all that moisture gets trapped in there, and you're exactly right. It is a huge challenge that masons face. Painted bricks are always problematic because they store moisture in it. Unless that brick is 100% dry, which we'll never know if it is or not, especially if it's been in existence in a building, there's a certainty that at some point, whatever moisture's in it will try to migrate to the surface and will bubble any of that paint that's trapping the moisture in. There are masonry safe paints. They're not cheap. One of the best companies in the world is from Italy that makes those paints. The name escapes me, but they make a porous paint that allows for the paint, the bricks to breathe. There's other ways to decorate bricks as well, or masonry surfaces with things like a lime wash, where you're actually using the cement to etch more or less the coloring into the cement itself, but it still doesn't change the integrity of the brick and its ability to breathe. To remove it, there are different ways you could use that. There are different tools you could use. A wire wheel might be your friend, but it's going to mar the surface, and it might even burn some of the steel onto the surface if it's a tough enough piece of stone. There's only really one other way that you can remove it is either through sandblasting, which is messy and requires special equipment. And then there are also devices called needle scalers, and it's something you can hook up to an air compressor. And it's basically a bunch of little needles, and they just percussively kind of poke at the surface without doing too much damage, and they can actually chip the paint away in a pretty expedient process. But it's definitely a labor of love doing paint removal on masonry surfaces. And please don't paint your bricks. Any other questions before we go for a little walk?
What about a heat gun?
Depending on what kind of paint it is. If it was something like lead paint, I don't think I'd be cooking that with a heat gun. You could try it. I haven't really gone to the process of doing a lot of paint removal. Frankly, as a contractor, I kind of steer away from those because it is exhaustive and incredibly labor intensive. So it's definitely a labor of love if you decide to take it upon yourself, and bravo to you for doing it, if you do. Before we close, I don't know if it was mentioned, but that we are going to take a walk here if anybody's willing to go. It's a 4-minute walk down Ridge Street from here. We'll take a look at the sidewalk that was shown in the presentation, and you'll get to be able to see the texture and feel of it, and I can point out some of the more architectural or engineering components of it that were incorporated into that project. And before you go, there was a handout at the door. I don't know if all of you had a chance to grab, and if you didn't get it, I can always send you a copy of it via email or have Historic Harrisburg take that on. And if you want to contact me, there's some business cards back there. My cell phone and email is on there. If you have other questions, by all means, in the name of historic preservation, feel free to reach out to me.
I just wanted to add a comment that as we hear about this idea of having to bring in rock from other areas,
Yes.
you will now know where and how spotted lanternfly came to Pennsylvania.
If I can interrupt, Dwayne was the former director, am I right, of the Hardwoods Development Council, my former boss at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture when I was pulling around the Woodmobile, which was his invention, and was initially an effort to bring the awareness of our great resource of hardwoods here in the state of Pennsylvania, and to let us know the threats that are there that are threatening our forests. And spotted lanternfly found its way here on a shipping container from Asia in a pile of rock. Dumped in Berks County, was it? And that's the locale that has been identified for being the host of the first eggs that were hatched in the entire Western Hemisphere.
Oh my God.
So, get your stones locally if you can.
Well, everybody, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
This is the first how-to program we've had for a couple of years, but I think we're gonna reinstate doing it at least annually, because this was a great turnout, and I think if, how many people would like to have more how-to with various different things, whether it's paint or masonry or carpentry or whatever? So there is interest in that. So we'll work on getting some future presenters like Matthew, who really did a super job. You know your stuff and you presented it very well. Matthew, we can't pay you for what you did today, but because this was so good, we're gonna give you a free quarter-page ad in the Candlelight House Tour booklet for your business.
Oh, thanks,
And-
David.
And I think that will lead to you perhaps purchasing ads in future years.
Of
Promo. For those
Again.
For those that want to go with Matthew on the walking tour, the shortcut will be out our back door there to Susquehanna Street. If you're not going on the walking tour, you go home as you normally would. It's up to you. That's optional, but as he said, it's only just a block or two away, and I'm gonna go, so we'll look forward to that.
Great. And if those hand tools went missing, they have my initials on them and a GPS tracker, because everybody likes to take your hand tools on the job. No, it looks like Pop's got those. Thanks again, everybody, for being a great audience.